Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's meeting of Full Council. Welcome also to those members of the press and public who are joining us via the live stream. Before we begin, please can I take this opportunity to remind member and officer colleagues to turn mobiles and computers to silent and ensure that when using the microphones, the red light is on and then turned off when you have finished speaking. Moving now to agenda item 1. Can I ask member services to report any apologies for absence, please?
Thank you. We've had the following apologies from councillors Carney, Christie, Connor, Count, Mrs Davis, Miss French, Gersner, Humphrey, Mrs Laws and Marks. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 2, the minutes of the meetings held on the 15th of September and 7th of November 2025 are shown on pages 3 to 18 of the agenda pack. I would like to move approval of the minutes for both meetings. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. Members, if you have any comments, then please raise your hand. No hands have been raised, therefore the minutes of both meetings are approved. For information, you will find at pages 19 to 20 of the agenda pack a list of civic engagements the Vice Chairman and I have attended in the weeks preceding Full Council. Agenda item 4. I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone who attended my carol service on the 5th of December. It was an enjoyable event in the historic St Peter and St Paul's Church, Wisbech, where a wonderful festive atmosphere was created to mark the start of the season. I would again like to extend my thanks to member services for their assistance in organising the event, as well as Reverend Paul Kite, Paul Med, Councillor Steve Tierney and Vanessa O'Keefe, the Clarkson Singers and the children of Orchards Primary School. There are no announcements from the Chief Executive today. Agenda item 5 is to receive any declarations of interest under the local Code of Conduct or any interest under the Code of Conduct on planning matters in respect of any items to be discussed at this meeting. If you have anything to declare, can you please raise your hand? 2 hands. Thank you.
Chairman, item 11 on the agenda, I'll leave the room when that's in discussion.
Thank you.
Yeah, item 11, I shall also be leaving the room, and also item number 12, as I'm a personal licence holder.
Thank you. Yes.
Also, item number 11, please. Item number 11.
Thank you. Any more? No. Thank you. Agenda item 6. There have been no written questions submitted in accordance with Rule 8.6, and we will therefore proceed straight to questions under Rule 8.4. Councillor Booth, you may now ask questions of the leader within the allotted time limit of 20 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll keep this brief as I've got a bit of a cough at the moment, so please excuse me if I start coughing. But really, it's just to ask the leader for an update to my question last time about this flag competition. You said that you were going to look into it and get back to us as soon as possible. That was 3 months ago. So, what's the situation? There was obviously a motion passed where the council said they wanted this competition, and nothing's happened. Surely the will of the council should be followed.
Councillor Bowden.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Councillor Booth, for your question, which is quite opportune, as this is something I was following up only in the last week. And I have to say, despite the resolution of this council, I find remarkably little appetite towards spending time and money on the competition. And whilst that is what the Flag Institute said that it required, nevertheless, I just haven't seen from members of this council the enthusiasm that I would have expected, given the overwhelming majority who voted in favour of going down that road. Now, if I'm wrong, and if there are members of this council who are particularly enthusiastic about it, I would be more than happy to discuss with them how it would be possible, with their assistance and potential leadership, of moving that agenda forwards. Otherwise, I suggest we may need to look at alternative means of moving forward on this issue, which may not involve having any competition at all. But again, that will be for full council to determine. But my first request would be, if anyone feels really strongly that there needs to be a competition and they would like to play some part in making sure that it's correctly organised, I would be really pleased to speak to them with a view to moving that forwards. At the moment, I've got, with all due respect, some rather more serious matters to consider, such as what's happening with local government reorganisation, what's happening on the budget, and what's happening on a whole host of other policy issues that we've got to be concerned about. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I find that response a little bizarre because the council voted for this competition, so surely as leader you should make sure that it's delivered. Okay, there might not be enthusiasm now, but the council still made a resolution that that's what they wanted to proceed with, so it should be delivered as far as I'm concerned.
Councillor Booth. Sorry, Councillor Code.
No, I'm still the leader, fortunately, for me at least. But Councillor Booth, you're entirely correct, of course. When council decides on something, it is for me to try and make sure that it's delivered. And I'm not finding that there is the appetite for delivery that matches the vote that was taken. Now, if it turns out that I'm wrong, especially I've now got this public opportunity to speak to everyone, if it turns out that I'm wrong and that there are individuals within this chamber who are enthusiastic about this and who are willing to assist with the time which it will take without having too much financial resource or officer resource being taken up with it, then I'll be more than interested in talking to them from whatever political party or none, be more than interested in talking to them with a view to moving it forward. If I just don't find that enthusiasm, it may well be that I'll need to come back with a quite different proposition in the very near future. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
No more questions, Chair.
Thank you. In accordance with Procedure Rule 8.1, members will find the Portfolio Holders Briefing Report at pages 21 to 44 of the agenda pack. Procedure Rule 8.2 permits questions to Cabinet members about any matter which falls within their portfolio responsibilities, and members are reminded that there is a total time allocation of 1 hour for this item. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you. This is a question for Councillor Tierney in your portfolio as for refuse. I've been made aware that our MP, Stephen Barclay, is trying to discourage organisations from using MVV in order to, I suppose, make it unviable. Can you tell me, is there any chance that Cambridge County Council would use MVV in the future?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I wish that I could tell you that there is no chance, because back in 2019, the council almost unanimously passed a motion opposing the incinerator in Wisbech, and so you would expect that they would have remained strong, but I don't feel like that is actually what's happening. Now, I'd love to be proven wrong, but we'll have to wait and see. The simple fact is, at the Environment Committee recently, they did make a point that they wanted to save money by using incineration as a method of waste. They didn't name anywhere they were going to use, but it seems to me that in the future, one of the obvious places, if it is built, is going to be the MVV incinerator. and probably the cheapest given the distance that they would have to travel. Certainly, I expect that they would be competitive. And so it worries me greatly that they may well plan to do that. Now, they haven't actively said that, and I think pressure needs to be put on them to please say that's not what we should be doing. We all agreed, all the different parties agreed back in 2019, I think it was, that we shouldn't support the incinerator. And even though things have moved on since then, I still think that should be the case, and I very much hope it will be. But I must admit, I'm very concerned about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mafferton.
Thank you, Chair. My question is to the leader, and it's regarding the building of the Fen Reservoir. And I was wondering if the leader of the council will agree to write to Anglian Water and other contractors and subcontractors on the site when the project does begin, considering that we have high unemployment among our youth in Finland, if we could encourage contractors and subcontractors to create apprenticeship programs for our local youth.
Councillor Bowden.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Chairman, and thank you to Councillor Imafidon for that question. And it's a quite timely question because it's only in the last couple of months that the Office of National Statistics produced their latest index of multiple deprivation for England. And this is produced every few years. The last version was the 2019 version. And as I say, it was less than 2 months ago that the 2025 version started being publicised. And the published version of the index of multiple deprivation did not show a good position generally so far as Finland was concerned, but showed a disastrous position for Finland so far as skills are concerned. There are some 200 relevant local authorities in the index of multiple deprivation, which are used for the measurements of the different domains of deprivation, and skills is one of those 7 domains. And of those 200 or so local authorities, Finland was the worst in the whole country as far as skills is concerned. And we have to bear in mind that we're in a combined authority area with some of the highest levels of skills in the whole country, in Cambridge City and especially in South Cambridgeshire. The disparity is enormous. And legally, the responsibility for skills and the budget for skills was devolved fairly recently from central government to the combined authorities. So now the combined authority has that responsibility and has that budget. And what I've been advocating is that they spend a significantly amount more of that budget in Finland, where we are at such an appalling position in that league table compared with other parts of the area, just to try and bridge that real gap, that real inequality which exists. But apprenticeships offer a real opportunity to give people skills, and transferable skills at that. Some of us are old enough to remember when apprenticeships were real apprenticeships. I know that times change, but nevertheless, the apprenticeships which are on offer now are massively valuable. And the Fens Reservoir is the largest infrastructure project in terms of value that we've ever had in Finland. And in terms of real value, it's the largest one there's been since the fens were created themselves by the draining of the fens in the 17th century. And given that, there are massive commercial opportunities and employment opportunities and skills opportunities. So, Councillor Imafidon, you're entirely correct to identify that ensuring that Anglian Water and their contractors and their subcontractors and their sub-subcontractors, and believe it or not, there will be sub-subcontractors, if not even further down the line, that they are structured so that a suitable number, an appropriate number of apprenticeships are part of the workforce, which will be operating there for quite a few years to construct the reservoir. Now, I'm more than happy to go along with your suggestion, Councillor Imafidon, of writing to Anglian Water. But at the same time, Madam Chairman, I'd like also to write to the Chief Executive of the Combined Authority to point out the very facts that I've just been pointing out now, to point out the opportunity which the Fens Reservoir gives us, and to ask him, in his capacity as Chief Executive of the body with responsibility for skills, to coordinate the achievement of exactly what you're suggesting, Councillor Maffeton. The more we can manage to get apprenticeship places for people from Chatteris, from March and beyond, the more local apprenticeships we can manage to get in place, the better. So I think your question is well timed, because it may be a couple of years before we start seeing some of this work actually starting, but now is the time for the planning. So yes, I will write that letter, but also one to the Chief Executive of the Combined Authority. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Burden. Councillor Cutler.
Thank you, Chairman. My questions are for Councillor Bowden, please. Murrow should be on Santa's good list. However, I suspect it has been placed on the naughty list and no play equipment will be delivered to Murrow playing fields. Although all is not lost because the Easter Bunny visits in April 2026, so we can try again then. Seriously, I appreciate your comments made at an earlier meeting regarding the Fenland Inspire scheme continuing until 2028, and not everywhere will be in the first phase. But residents of Murrow resent the neglect shown to it. I understand that you say you want to treat all areas equally, but it often does not feel like it in the rural villages. Murrow is possibly one of the Fenland villages that has the highest community volunteer base, and community spirit thrives there. Sadly, it appears to be one of the most neglected rural villages by our council. Residents struggle to find anything the council has provided in Murrow other than what it's bound to provide, waste bin collections. If you can show evidence of anything of significance that this council has provided in the village, then please declare it and we can let the residents know. More young families are now in the area, and it is extremely frustrating that they have to travel to other villages to find decent play equipment. Murrow would prefer not to be considered for play equipment in 2028 or 2027 or 2026. It really needs it in 2025. However, we only have 16 days left for Santa to install it, so that won't be happening. Obviously, we would like to be able to tell the residents positive news for Murrow. 2 questions, please. 1, please can you let me know what the latest status is on the district-wide assessment for where play equipment is needed? And when answering, I would be delighted for you to tell me that I am incorrect and Murrow is nowhere near the bottom of the neglected pile. Number 2, can you please advise whether Murrow has actually been looked at? Because without having been assessed, we won't even be on the list to receive the much-needed play equipment. And also, adult fitness equipment would not go amiss either. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Bowden.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Chairman. I'm afraid I'm not Father Christmas, so I'm not in a position to grant wishes, especially impossible wishes of play equipment in 2025. I'm not in a position to answer the question about the assessment because that is being done by officers, and neither I nor, to my knowledge, any other member of Cabinet or Council have seen it yet. Until we see that, I wouldn't be able to answer your question. But the remit that was given was very clear, and that remit was to do a thorough assessment of the whole of Fenland to see particularly those areas which are cold spots in terms of access for individuals, for children, for families to play areas and play equipment. And until I've received that report, I'm in no position to answer that, nor in any position to make any promises for any particular location, although I do have to tell members that quite a significant number of members have already mentioned specific areas that they would like, and I'm very grateful to Councillor Cutler, who's also contacted me privately before this meeting to advise me of her question and of the needs that the people of Murrow have got. However, moving back from that, whilst it was necessary on Fenland Inspire to have a phased timing of the work which was being done, it was always a fluid proposition subject to changes in circumstance. And so far as play equipment is concerned, a change of circumstance took place from the time that we originally set up the Fenland Inspire programme. And that was that we received a notification, surprisingly late in the day, of a significant amount, £1.5 million of tried in place impact funding from government. And that was a little more than a month ago that they gave us that knowledge, a month or two ago. But they told us that all the money had to be spent no later than March 2027. £1.5 million, well, it was quite restricted how it was allowed to be spent, but play equipment and play areas was one specific area which they said was within the rules to spend that money. It's actually quite difficult to spend money on play equipment. There's a time lag between the time you identify a location and the time that the play equipment actually gets erected. So we have quite a challenge ahead of us to spend that £1.5 million in some 15 months, 16 months. So today at Cabinet, an agenda paper was brought forward, which was agreed, asking officers to produce exactly what you were saying, which is the assessment of the areas which currently have insufficient play equipment, so that we could identify those areas where play equipment could be identified as being appropriate to be located. I can't promise that Morrow will be one such place. One of the things I did say at the meeting of Cabinet today, and I'll be having further discussions with members about this, is that I'm determined that we will end up with a formula to ensure that that £1.5 million is spread fairly, and possibly even quite evenly, but certainly fairly, across the whole of the area. Not just between the four towns, but taking into account the parishes, the villages ahead as well. So, sorry, this particular pseudo-Santa can't deliver anything for 2025. It may not be possible even to do it for 2026. And I can't promise that it would be Morrow, but those areas which are most in need are the ones which will, if I have anything to do with it, be prioritised. And I do take note of the comments which have been made, both privately to me by Councillor Cutler and today. And I have to say, quite a few other members have already also made such representations. I am quite determined, though, that the areas outside the four main towns get their fair share. Thank you very much indeed, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bowden. Councillor Miss Scanlon, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. First of all, I'd like to say this is not my question. This question is from Councillor Roy Gerstner, who is unfortunately recovering from illness. So they've asked me to present this question to the leader. Do you accept that on behalf of Fenland District Council, your responsibility to provide a suitable food bank in Whittlesea, in light of the District Council giving Whittlesea Emergency Food Aid notice to leave the present location at the Manor Leisure Centre? If you accept that responsibility, would you now inform the Council of your future plans to provide a food bank in Whittlesea? Thank you.
Councillor Bowden.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. No, district councils do not have a responsibility for providing food banks. It is something which is a discretionary service that we can provide, but it's not one that we have a statutory duty to provide. However, the Whittlesea Emergency Food Aid Organisation found itself potentially homeless a few years ago, and we had some spare and, I have to say, not particularly salubrious accommodation available at the leisure centre, at the Manor Leisure Centre, and we allowed WIFA, the Whittlesea Emergency Food Aid, to utilise that both for their storage and also for their distribution. Whittlesea Emergency Food Aid provides an invaluable resource in Whittlesea, managing to cater for many individuals and many families who otherwise would have really massive difficulties in coping. So it's a very valuable organisation. When it was agreed that we would refurbish, in fact largely rebuild, the Manor Leisure Centre, it was necessary for funding as well as other reasons that we maintained that leisure centre as being wholly for leisure centre purposes, and extraneous organisations such as WEFA wouldn't be able to play a part in that. However, knowing how important WEFA was, I was more than happy at that time, and I still stand by it, to give assurance to the chairman of WEFA, former councillor Mason, to give David Mason the assurance that one way or another we would maintain the presence of WEFA and the work which is done in WEFA. Councillor Mason suggested even just having a container, a modified container, could be sufficient on the Manor Leisure Centre site. And I regard that as being a backstop position, as being the worst option available. But if it's the only option available, then so be it. However, I have been approaching other organisations with a view to something better. And at the moment, work is being done by officers of Cambridgeshire County Council, looking at ways in which potentially some of the work that they do, that they fund separately in Whittlesea, could be incorporated with WEFA, and or some of the premises that they have, and I don't want to go into details about which premises, but some of the premises that they have may also be able to be utilised. They are still investigating that. They haven't come back to me with a final answer on that. I'm hopeful they will come up with something, but if they don't, even though we don't have the responsibility to do it, we will do it to make sure that that organisation continues to operate. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Booth.
Thank you, Chair. Just following up to a question put by Councillor Cutler and the leader's response. Back in 2019, myself and then Councillor Sarah Blythe put a motion to this council asking for all the play equipment to be reviewed across the district, and that motion was passed, and whenever we asked for updates we were told that the assessment was being done. So are we saying 6 years later we still haven't had a completed assessment done? I know there were some parts done, so for example Parson Grove, we had the play equipment there refreshed, and in Guy Herne, thanks to Section 106 contributions, there was a major upgrade to the equipment there. But it surprises me that we've got to do more assessment, given that it should have been done in the last term, or municipal term of this council. Yeah, things have changed, but there surely can't be that much more work that needs to be done.
Councillor.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Chairman. I do recall, it wasn't obviously my portfolio responsibility, but I do recall that report when it came out. I've got a feeling that it was Councillor Murphy who had some involvement with that. I could be wrong about it. And I remember the report thinking how much data there is and how difficult it was actually to process all of that data and to make comparisons between different locations. But that was some years ago now. Things are different. There have been some areas where there has been considerable refurbishment which has taken place. And we need to take that into account, as well as the fact that there are some areas where there has been a massive increase in population and an increase in house building. We also need to take into account, beyond what was in that report, those play areas which are not funded by Fenland District Council, but nevertheless, whether through Section 106 agreements or through the County Council, nevertheless are in situ. So it is appropriate for us to re-look at that. I'd be astonished if officers didn't use that previous report as the basis for what they're going to come up with. And I look forward with great interest, enthusiasm, and almost impatience about for that report, because, as I said before, we will need to move quickly. And at Cabinet today, we did say that at next Cabinet, we would receive a report to give guidance as to where this new play equipment could and should go. I would anticipate it will go to a large number of locations, but again, I don't want to preempt what is decided at the end of the day. The one thing I'm quite certain about is that whether I'm talking about Whittlesea, March, Chatteris, Wisbech, or any of the villages, one size won't fit all. And we need to be more flexible than that. Even though we're short of time, we need to be more flexible than that in reflecting actual need that there is in individual localities. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Did you want to come back?
Yes, Chair, thank you. Yeah, and that's the point I'm trying to make is we should have most of the data there. It just needs updating and working from this as opposed to starting from the beginning. I should also declare an interest in this because I was made chair of Murray Community Facilities earlier this year, so I have an interest in this matter as well. So, but yeah, I think we shouldn't be starting from scratch on this. We should have a lot of information there already. So let's hope it gets on and gets it completed quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hoy.
I have two questions. Shall I ask them one at a time? Okay, so the first one is to the leader in the absence of Councillor Laws. Sorry, I haven't given you notification of this one, but I'm hoping it's going to be a very easy yes answer. So in the in Wisbech on the border, there is a development called the Elms, which actually sits in the Borough Council of Kings Lynn and West Norfolk. It was given planning permission a couple of years ago, and they started discharging their surface water into the dike behind Westmead Avenue. And they residents contacted Kings Lynn and West Norfolk. I contacted Kings Lynn and West Norfolk, and they've done nothing about it. It's now got worse. They're discharging on a daily basis into the dike, and people's gardens are now getting flooded. It's really causing, and we're not talking about 1 or 2 houses, we're talking perhaps 20 or 30 houses are being affected by this. It's causing a real great deal of upset for residents. Now, the residents affected by it are Fenland residents. They are Fenland taxpayers. The development is in Kings Lynn and West Norfolk. So obviously our enforcement action, and officers are saying the enforcement action that we can take is obviously virtually zero. However, it is really causing such a great problem for residents. So can we write to the Chief Executive at Kings Lynn and West Norfolk to say quite how disgusted we are that they aren't doing anything about this development? I mean, they've had workmen there as well for 4 months now that don't seem to be doing anything on the roadway. And that development of, it's only about 40 houses, but it's causing so much upset for people that live around there, and they're all our residents, and they're suffering.
Councillor Bowden.
Thank you very much indeed. In the absence of Councillor Laws, I'll do my best. And whilst you didn't give me notification of this question, Councillor Hoy, I am aware that you did write to our officers within, I think, the last week about this very subject, and I looked at that correspondence with a great deal of interest. Local authorities need to work together in order to achieve the objectives that we all have for our localities. And such partnership working happens a great deal of the time behind the scenes, untrumpeted, unnoticed. And it's only when partnership working between authorities fails that questions like this arise. And this is a clear case. I must admit, I've only heard one side of the case, but what I have heard makes it sound like a clear case where we are being let down by our neighbour. So I'm more than happy, Madam Chairman, to write a letter to the Chief Executive and leader of Kings Lynn and West Norfolk about this particular issue. And I very much hope that Kings Lynn and West Norfolk will do the decent thing here, because at the end of the day, cooperation works 2 ways, and it really would be unhelpful if they failed to recognise the significant impact that these works appear to be having on some of our residents. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? Sorry, Councillor Hoy.
Yes, so the second question. So the other one was to Councillor French, as she's in charge of ARP. So I don't expect you to have all the answers to this today, because it might be quite detailed with figures, but obviously it was announced in the budget the end to retail and hospitality business rate relief. And I've had quite a lot of businesses get in touch with me about how concerned they are as how this is going to impact them. So I just wondered if we have figures available for how much that's expected, how many businesses are affected, of the cost it's going to be to them, because it'd be interesting to know how much it's going to affect Fenland. Thank you.
Councillor Mrs. French.
Thank you, Councillor Hoy, and thank you for giving me notice to this. I have contacted ARP. They're actually working on this now. We do have 7 authorities that are involved with ARP, and they will be updating us with a full report. Hopefully January, late January, February.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure if I can do this, Madam Chair, so apologies if I'm wrong, but just to come back onto Councillor Hoy's question about the drainage and the flooding, that'd be worth looking at, Mr. Leader, to send paperwork realistically to middle level and to Wisbech 100th IDB, who will actually deal with the drainage systems of that. They were the one that were given permission and the volume of discharge into that particular ditch.
Yes, it certainly wouldn't be middle level as far as that location is concerned. Whether it falls within the 100 of Wisbech or not. So it's the Kings Lynn IDB rather than the 100 of Wisbech. The boundaries don't follow local authority boundaries exactly. I understand exactly the point you're making, but I assume, and again, it's a big assumption on my part because I haven't been involved with it, but I assume that planning permission was given by Kings Lynn and West Norfolk, and there are conditions in that planning permission, and they will have been accepted by the local IDB. So it is really for King's Lynn to enforce those conditions if the particular building sites, particular properties involved are causing this nuisance. I don't have detailed knowledge of the particular planning application within King's Lynn and West Norfolk, but I'm sure that the Chief Executive and the leader of King's Lynn and West Norfolk would be able to use their knowledge and contacts to ensure that whoever can take action would take action.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs French.
Thank you. My question is to Councillor Tierney. Over the last few months, last three months, I believe, I've been contacted by several parents and young teenagers to see if there's any chance we go back to doing some work experience. I did ask you a few weeks ago, but I can't remember whether you fully responded.
Thank you, Councillor French, and thank you for notifying me of the question 8 minutes ago. Yeah, you did mention that to me, and I did forget to follow it up, so I'm really sorry. I will speak to officers about it. I think it is important to make sure that we're still giving work experience at the council where possible. I know we have certainly done it in the past, because many years ago my son came and did work experience here. So I'll chase up on that and find out what the current situation is, and I'll come back to you by email and the rest of the councillors too. Thank you.
Are there any further questions? No. So we'll move on to motion item 8. Item 8 is a motion on notice from Councillor Tierney, which appears on pages 45 to 46 of the agenda pack. Councillor Tierney, would you like to move your motion? You have 5 minutes to present the motion and say anything you wish about it. Your next opportunity to speak will then be when summing up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Normally, you all have heard me in the past say that I don't normally like to do motions whose only resolution is right to the government. And I've said this at other councils as well, because broadly, I think mostly they are just posturing. We're mostly only doing it. We know the government is probably not going to listen. They might write a polite letter back, but they're not going to change their policy because of what Fenland District Council say. But every once in a while, I do think they're valuable. And the reason I think this one is valuable is because for me, with quite a lot of competition, this is probably the worst policy I've seen come out of the current government. The one that I find the most frightening, because there are so many potential consequences for where it goes in the future. Now, I don't plan to read this whole motion out to you. You've all got a copy of it. You've all seen what it is. But broadly, the government wants to introduce a digital ID scheme. And their argument for this is that it would stop illegal working. But of course, evidence has already shown that it's going to do next to nothing to stop illegal working. And there have already been talk about how it will be tied to employment or potentially service access use. And there are lots of worries about it. There are worries about our basic civil liberties, things like our freedom, our privacy, our ability to go about our business without showing a government piece of paperwork, but also we're being tracked for everything we do, which there's a potential for once you introduce digital ID. It's worrying because it's going to cost a huge amount of money, and yet it's clearly not popular amongst the public. If you look out there, you've seen that there's already a massive petition with millions of signatures opposing digital ID, and our own MP has got his own petition, which has got over 1,000 signatures. You can see that this is an issue that matters to a lot of people. There have been protests and demonstrations, but there's no sign that the government is listening. Now, the reason that I brought this motion today isn't because I think the government's going to go, well, Finland have said it, so maybe we ought to rethink. I don't think that. What I do think is that the people, our constituents, many of whom are strongly opposed to digital ID, expect us, when something this big is coming up, to speak up on their behalf. Even if nobody listens, we'll stand up and we'll say this is what we think on their behalf. And I believe that the majority of Finland citizens will probably not support digital ID. And I certainly hope that's the case. And I hope that everyone in this room will agree that it's a damaging and dangerous idea that the government has brought forwards, and we need to do everything we can to encourage them not to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Yeah, Councillor Miscandler. Thank you. You can reserve your right to the end of the debate or to speak now. Do you wish to speak now? Yeah. Reserve. Thank you. The item is now open for discussion, and members are reminded that they are each able to speak once and for only 5 minutes. Councillor Burden.
Thank you very much indeed. I have nothing in principle against digital IDs. My problem is the practice, and in two respects. The first is that under our present system of government, and I'm not making this party political, but under our present system of government, we see in this country how much overreach there is by government, and I don't just mean central government, but also by local government, how much overreach there is when central or local government are given powers. They often use those powers in a far wider context than they were meant to be used, and to the extent of trying to control people's lives for their own agendas. And it worries me that there not only could, but would, under the current governance systems that we have in this country, there would be overreach, and we will find that the data which is being, or would be collated by digital ID would be utilised for purposes which I think none of us would agree with. And my second objection is this would be the largest IT exercise by government since the NHS IT system was being upgraded. And it still is being upgraded, really. It's been a disaster of an IT program. And I honestly can't see government managing to get the IT right for two reasons. The first is the natural incompetence of government, again, not making a party political point there. And the second is they're bound to change the specification again and again during the course of the program, just making an impossible program even worse. So for practical reasons, as well as my fear for the overreach that there would be by government using this data, for those reasons I support this motion. Not that I'm against digital ID in principle, I just don't believe that now is the right time, nor do we have the ability to commission digital ID in an efficient and effective way.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. Of course I'm going to support this. You know, how many IDs do we want? We've got driving licence. My old paper driving licence is still in date, but apparently I can't use it. We've got firearm certificates, shotgun certificates, which actually hold the motion in next time, because they're now being changed. They're trying to put them together, and the data, we know the data's going to be sold. That's all they want it for. It's just one big con and control. But when you think back of just how much ID each and every one of us have got. Now, my shotgun and firearms licence, they are the safest form of ID possible. They are signed by the Chief Constable of the Police in this area. They have to have your medical records. But it's actually, you go into a bank or anywhere else with that ID, it's not classed as a recognised ID. But yet it's the most secure form. I would actually be better off walking into a bank with the gun and leaving the ID at home without any ID. But this is, why do they want to introduce new things all the time? Just to go ID, ID, ID. We can't have many more IDs. We'll soon want an ID for every day of the week. And it's just not physically possible. So I'm going to fully support this motion. And yeah, it's a stupid idea. And it wants thrown in the gutter, the same place as what the government do. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Purser.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I think, well, I knew before when I actually read part of the I actually lost most of the email, unfortunately, but I've had a bit of a bee in my bonnet about this for quite some time, not just on this, but I'm probably going to be the only dissenter here as far as ID cards are concerned. I am in favour of an ID card, but for other different reasons. There's a number of reasons I actually feel that it's important. I'm not in favour of it being compulsory, but available and voluntary. I've often thought to myself, as far as this is concerned, it's probably the only Labour policy I'd actually agree with, and especially at the moment. But with a lot of heartache and possibly a lifesaver it could be. I hear many arguments against these cards, most of which I'm not too sure I completely agree with, like personal, private information, data protection and the likes. I sometimes wear a wristband like this, called an SOS talisman. And I've also, which unfortunately the capsule that they have in this isn't big enough for the information that I need to actually put on it. So I sometimes wear a wristband like this, which has actually got other information, which actually says in there, please see my wallet, or my mobile card, which has actually got all my medical information in there and all my last wishes and all such things as that. I did actually buy a band here with a QR code on, but me being as technically minded as I am, got no idea how you actually use that. The wristbands I wear have simple pieces of paper. My name is Mark. For further information about allergies, medication, and what they call ice, see the folder in my wallet or mobile phone. Also notice from the people who are more technically minded than me, which I say I'm not, there's also an app on people's phones which says, you know, for personal information. Some of the information in there are my allergies, my medication, ice, which is in case of emergency, my doctor's surgery, next of kin, other contacts, and national health, my date of birth and place of birth, which I think are really quite important in some aspects. Basically, in an emergency, police and ambulance crews could easily identify me and the essential medication that I need. Information that could potentially save my life and even prove who I am. None of which I actually feel is confidential. I also have a last wish in there as well. If you cremate me, I'll come back and haunt you. In the case of one particular club I'm involved with, the Secretary also holds PEEP information on us, on its members, which is Personal Emergency Exit Plan, which again can be held in that. I also know there's at least one other member who carries a medical potential life-saving card, not here with us today. I've heard it also argued that some information that could be potentially used in electronic systems subject to data protection and a breach of privacy. I'm not too sure that I agree with this. Most of us, I have to say, as Councillor Taylor said, carry a photo driving licence, a passport, and all which contain personal information. In that I can't see exactly what's wrong with an ID card if you've done nothing wrong or nothing illegal. Most of us have been captured from time to time on CCTV. And some of that can actually be essential for fighting and preventing crime and the likes. I've also heard it argued that a card could be cloned. I had my credit cards cloned already, and that card was actually the back of my drawer at home. One of their former members here had a driving licence cloned, which he only discovered when he was refused a bank account. The police then contacted him saying, "We have your driving licence." He said, "Well, you can't have, I've got it in my wallet." They said, "No, we've got it here." When he went to the police station to collect that digital, the driving licence, they found the forgery had one digit difference, which indeed happens. Indeed, so in today's mind, this can be a big organised crime anyway. Again, for me, the data protection issue drives me up the wall. It's often overused by people who probably don't understand it. And example in awkward situations, what does this mean? I can't tell you because of data protection. As my grandfather used to say, enough to make the Pope swear. There are three things that can't be changed: your iris, your blood group, your DNA, your fingerprints, date and place of birth. Although these can't be changed, there's also national insurance number, national health number, and in some cases, military number. Yes, these could all be electronically stored and potentially identify people for legal reasons, potentially save a life or potentially solve crime. In the case of crime, if a crime is committed, and the DNA is known, police could actually stop somebody and say, "Could we see your ID card, please?" And it could also prove who you are, as well as who you are not. So I've had two friends who, if had digital cards, could have actually saved an awful lot. One of them who had very, very poor eyesight, so he couldn't drive. He'd never been abroad, so he didn't have a passport. When he went to get a bank account, they said, even though he was actually known to them, they said, "No official ID, you can't prove who you are." I'll only be another few seconds, Madam Speaker, I promise. Another friend of mine had severe health problems, which at one time she was on 45 tablets a day. Sometimes she would hallucinate or even wander off without realising it. If she collapsed in the street, medical staff attending would have had no idea of her medical history. A card like this might potentially have saved her life. So, Madam Chairman and fellow councillors, with these thoughts in mind, there are positive aspects to it, and I feel that these cards could be of a good thing, so I'm afraid I can't support the motion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Noas, please.
Thank you. ID cards are an excellent idea for North Korea and China. Indeed, they do have it in both those countries, and I can tell you something about the Chinese system, which, looking into the future, projecting today into 5-10 years' time, is going to look like this, as it happens in China now. They have what is known as the social credit system. That's euphemistically called the social credit system. What that incorporates is, it began harmlessly enough as an ID card, is that it records your behavior. Have you had a parking ticket? Have you been involved in an accident? Have you been behind in your payments? Your banking history, your employment history? Have you been obedient to all the rules and regulations and never gone against the steer of the Communist Party? So they have a scoring system. They put all the scores together. And if you've got the highest score, you get numerous perks. And if you have the lowest score, you haven't been very diligent in obeying the government steer, you are what the British would call in the doghouse. You would have a number of restrictions placed on your daily life. You'd be banned from traveling. You'd be denied a number of normal living requirements. And I can tell you that most people here, if they were in China, the least is they would have a travel ban. Some of us, a bit more independent, would be incarceration. Now that's how the Chinese social credit system has evolved. You see the title, social credit system, is harmless, isn't it? Now, before I come to Councillor Persers, and I would require a couple of minutes to answer those queries in detail, please, Chair, I can tell you that it will also exaggerate the social inequalities. For example, they introduced it in India, something like this, called the Andhar card. And what they've found is that the Dalits, that is the lowest of the castes, I think they traditionally have 7 castes, find themselves excluded from a lot of the government benefits. They don't have smartphones, they don't have access to the internet. Just like in this country, there are a lot of people, including the elderly, who don't have the access to internet or smartphones or don't know how to use them. And there can be catastrophic consequences should the system be hacked, for example. It could constitute what is known as a hacker's honeypot, because it would incorporate so much information, and because this is how it's going to evolve, what the leader called the reach, the far reach. And I think another way to say that is the functional reach. It would eventually expand to engulf a lot of daily activities. Could be 5 years ahead, 10 years ahead. And should your ID be stolen, should your biometrics be stolen, you can replace a password and a PIN number. How are you going to replace your fingerprints, your facial features, your DNA? And all this will eventually be incorporated, and I will come to DNA in a moment, which Councillor Purser has referred to. So the individual would be vulnerable to blackmail, to fraud, to all sorts of dangers. And to use the word that the Councillor Cheney, dangerous, it would be very dangerous indeed. Now, coming to the medical information, I can tell you the NHS, in their next 10-year plan, are going to introduce the genomic medical service.
Councillor Hack, can I just remind you, you did only have 5 minutes.
5 minutes more? Okay, I'll be very quick. Now, for the medical information, the genomic medical service, it's going to have the genome information of everybody on this, and all this is going to be linked to the digital ID card. And currently, it is administered by the Palantir, the American CIA-financed company, and I fear that. I fear that because I don't trust anybody when it comes to national security. This Palantir company is CIA-financed. It has connections with the intelligence agencies and military agencies in America. And they already collect your medical information. They can be accessed without requiring to conflate everything into one digital card. And I don't trust this government. They've done so many U-turns. I don't trust a word they say. They're just a bunch of charlatans, the whole lot of them. So I don't trust them. I want to keep the freedom this country has fought for thousands of years, at least since King John and Magna Carta. We need to maintain our individuality and freedom. I support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Noyes. Councillor Voigt, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to fully support this motion, Madam Chairman. We are going into a time that is going to be very different from our lifetimes. We are making a decision about something that's going to affect our coming generations, not so much us here right now. All I will say is that the freedoms that we give up today, our children will never know. So I think digital ID is not the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hoy.
Thank you. So a couple of points. The question or the comment that was made, if you have done nothing wrong, don't worry. Now, I used to believe that. So when people used to mention about CCTV and things, I used to say, well, why are you worried? Because if you've not done anything wrong, there's nothing to catch you on. And the reply that I got when I asked that was, well, if that's the case, give me access to your bank account then. Let me have a look at it, because you've got nothing to hide, then what's the problem? And I thought, actually, that's a good point, because I haven't got anything to hide, but I wouldn't want someone looking through my bank account. You know, they're going to see I ordered too much Uber Eats and stuff. Like, you know, it's going to be, you just don't want it, do you? You want, it's your private information. And the fact is that really we do have a right to privacy, and that is very, very, very important. Now, I think your views do change as well over the years, because I used to be very much not really worried about these kind of things. I wasn't worried about state overreach. I was thinking, you know, the government actually wants what's best for us. They, you know, they are doing good things for us. And as time goes on, the more and more sceptical I get. Maybe I'm getting stubborn, maybe I'm getting more pro-freedom, I don't know. But I'm a little bit worried that by the time I get to 60, I'm going to be living in a cabin in a forest. Like a real crazy swampy style, I don't know. But it is, to be honest, getting that way, because the same part of me says there's some small problems with it. So digital ID isn't infallible, and I know it was mentioned about you know, having medical information on there. So in a past profession, I worked in a job where a client had on their file, do not resuscitate, on their electronic file. Do not resuscitate is a very serious direction. That meant if that person had a heart attack or anything happened to them, we could not resuscitate them and they would have died. That was wrong. The information on that digital system was wrong. Luckily, it got corrected at a later date, and thank God that actually that person hadn't had anything happen to them. But digital things are not infallible. They are perfectly fallible. Of course, paper is too. You know, there's nothing perfect, but People that think that digital is going to somehow be a magic solution, it's not. And also, digital things can be hacked. How often are we seeing emails hacked, Facebook messages hacked, various things hacked? And we mustn't rely on computer software being good. Look at the Horizon scandal for the post office. You know, people lost their lives over that computer system. People killed themselves because the computer system went wrong. So I have real grave danger about where the government are going. And then I suppose the bit more controversial bit of me, I think's even more sceptical, thinking this is actually deliberate. This isn't. I don't believe the government think this is going to do this to stop migration. I think that's the argument they're using, because if you're here illegally, you don't care about a digital ID. You're here illegally. You're not going to follow the law suddenly and have a digital ID. I think all of this is going one way. They're taxing the farmers, so farmers can't run them. And then who will buy them? The government, because then the government will own the farms. They're going to tax small businesses to go out of existence, so the only jobs available are going to be through the state. An ever-increasing benefit bill, so they can make everyone reliant again on the state. I think they want to ban petrol and diesel cars, so only a very few can afford to buy an expensive car, so then only a few people can afford to drive, because what does driving do? It gives you your freedom. And I also think they're ramping up community tensions on immigration, so we're all spending so much time arguing against each other that we aren't paying attention to the real stuff that's going on behind the scenes. I think they've been trying to bring in worldwide communism for years now, and we must resist it.
Thank you. Councillor Booth, please.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't really going to speak on this, but I do support this motion. The reason I support it is the whole reason they're introducing this is more about proving your right to work. The information, as it says on the government websites, that they will include at the moment is name, date of birth, information, nationality, residency status, and a photo, which would be the basis for biometric systems similar to passports. I'm probably opposite to some of these other councillors. In my youth, I was probably more against ID cards. The older I'm getting, the less worried I am about it, because I just feel if it was one card that you could use, which I think several councillors have said, it might be better. But I guess the problem is it's the mission creep, as it were, that could happen, and what else gets included. Now, Councillor Purser's sort of gave an impassioned speech about medical information. Well, at the moment, this isn't what's being proposed by the government. This is purely around the right to work, and I think it's that tokenism against this anti-immigrant rhetoric that's being sort of fueled up. I don't think it's just the government doing that. I think it's the Conservatives, it's Reform, which are also trying to use it for their own ends. So no one's clean in this matter, but this whole thing is going to be an expensive waste of time. It's going to be an inconvenience. It's probably not going to be delivered anyway, because it's going to, as the leader said, be an IT system that's going to probably not actually deliver what's intended. So yeah, I think it's just a waste of public money, to be honest, at the end of the day. So I will support the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Cutler.
Thank you. I fully support the motion. I'm not going to give any comments. I think the motion says it all and is quite clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Miscanton, would you like to exercise your right to speak?
Yes, thank you. On a point that Councillor Hoy made, earlier this year, the government actually gave authority to look into everyone's bank account, so they can look into it at any time they like. So don't worry about your bank account. They already know what's in it. I fully support this. I'm one of the members in this chamber that's old enough to remember ID cards in the Second World War. They were there for a purpose, to stop the fifth colonists coming into here and doing naughty things to us. With this country's abysmal control over IT systems, and the Horizon system is a classic example, and other things that have been hacked. This is just another thing for the ne'er-with-all countries that enjoy hacking into our systems, and it goes on a continuous basis. I'm sure the IT department here can tell you the number of people have tried to hack into Fenland District Council, a small council in this country, from outside that's been hacked or tried to be hacked. I've had it personally happen to me try to hack into my system. And I'm sure most of the councillors here have had exactly the same thing. I fully support this because I think it's going nowhere. It will cost an absolute fortune and will not work because there'll always be someone to clone a card or give you a false card to go with it. It happens all the time. So I fully support this, and I think Councillor Tierney's right in bringing it forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tierney, would you like to sum up?
Yes, thank you, Chair. An interesting debate. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. Just to respond to a few of them, Councillor Miscandlin and Councillor Booth both felt that it probably wouldn't work, and I think that would be a good outcome. Even though I don't want to waste a lot of money, that would be a good outcome for us, because if it worked, that's when things get bad. I think that that Councillor Noaz and Councillor Hoy both had the right of it, in that there is, and also Councillor Booth, the mission creep towards the dark side of how things are governed. That's the danger. And all I would say to you, I guess, is a tool is just a tool until it gets into the hands of somebody that you don't want to have that tool. And you think about this, think about where this will go, more and more information kept on it. If it's digital, remember, a lot of people seem to be referring to a physical card. I don't care about physical card. It's the digital ID, the digital aspect I don't like, because that record of everything you do, everything you buy, everywhere you go, everything you say, eventually will be tagged on your card. And even things that the government know that you don't see, tagged to your card. And once they do that, imagine the worst government in your mind, and you all have different governments in mind, I know, but imagine the worst government with access to that information. And you think that that government won't use it against you. Now, I know that's conspiracy theory-esque, but the point is it's possible. And it's only possible because if we allow it to happen, if we allow it to get to that point. After the Second World War, we turned down ID cards once we didn't need them anymore. In 2008, when Labour tried to introduce it, we turned down ID cards because the country said, that's not how Britain works. It should never be how Britain works. And all I guess I would say, I've got a little quote that I did want to read at the end here, but I've lost my phone, unfortunately. I just want to read you the words of George Orwell. If you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on the human face forever. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move to the vote. Can you signify clearly what you're voting, please? All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? Thank you. Any abstentions?
So we have, the results are 28 in favour, 1 against and 1 abstention. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the Treasury Management Strategy Statement and Annual Investment Strategy Mid-Year Review 2025 to 26, which appears at pages 47 to 56 of the agenda pack. I'll now call on Councillor Bowden to present this report.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Chairman. I don't intend to go through this report on a line-by-line basis. I assume you've all done so privately before this meeting anyway. But I will just highlight a few areas which need to be highlighted. And the first is that we stayed within all of the indicators that we had planned to stay within during the year. And the year has pretty much gone according to plan. There have been some changes to market sentiment through the year, which are likely to carry on or expected to carry on into the future. So there is both in the short term, the medium term, and the long term, there is an expectation that interest rates will fall. But those falls are looking increasingly sticky and longer term than might have been expected only a few months ago. And a lot depends upon the nature of the success or otherwise of the government's economic strategy, which may have some significant and unwelcome implications within the period that we're talking about for the near future. But our borrowing position has been, again, pretty much as expected. We expected that we would go into borrowing this year, but rather unexpectedly, We've only needed to do so for a very short period of time in the summer, to the tune of £5 million from another local authority, just to cover cash flow. And since then, we haven't had to borrow at all. We did repay that borrowing. It's not at all impossible that before the end of the financial year, we will be borrowing again, but that was anticipated in the budget presented last year. We have had one particular incident which has been highly regrettable. Members will recall that the budget was set for this financial year with a deficit of £1.432 million. And I said to members at that budget meeting back in February last year, not to worry too much, the number was going to come down very considerably indeed. And in fact, I couldn't promise it, but I was aiming for a surplus in the year. And yes, the number has come down for various reasons during the course of the year, but we're not yet projecting a surplus. I'm sorry to say we're still projecting a deficit for the year of £307,000. Now, I have every intention of working with officers and especially with the finance team to bring that 307,000 deficit into a surplus in the current year. But it would already be a surplus were it not for one very unfortunate incident. And that was the property fund that we invested in several years ago with the Federated Hermes Property Fund. These property funds that we invested in, we did so with the knowledge that we would have a guaranteed income, which is what we need, together with, in the long term, we would have capital appreciation. And we entered into it at that time with the long-term view in mind. Quite appropriately, we've always looked for the long term in the actions we've taken in this council, and we had never anticipated until less than a year ago that we didn't have a long-term future as a council. So we anticipated that we'd be holding on to these funds for quite a long period of time, and we knew that property funds do fluctuate in terms of their capital value, but as long as the income was coming in, it was achieving the objective that we wanted. However, the Federated Hermes Property Fund, for various reasons, ended up amalgamating, that was the word they used, with a legal and general property fund. And I think rather than the word amalgamated, it might be more accurate to say it was taken over by the legal and general property fund, although not officially. And the legal and general property fund wouldn't accept any investments which weren't pension investments. So we found ourselves thrown out of the property fund that we'd invested in the long term. And unfortunately, and officers did work on this, there was no way in which we could manage to get any recompense for the difference between the capital value of the fund when we went in and the capital value of the fund when the merge took place. And so we've had to accept a loss, which is a revenue loss in the year of £362,000 on that investment. Now, completely unanticipated, there was no reason to believe that there was going to be any difficulty when we took out this fund. And if it weren't for that £362,000 loss that we've had to take into this year's figures, we'd actually already be showing a projected outturn surplus in the year of £55,000 rather than the £1.432 million deficit that we started out. Nevertheless, I'll continue to work over the course of the next 3.5 months to try to ensure that despite that property fund loss that we've had to take on the books, that we nevertheless still manage to get a surplus in the year. I can't absolutely guarantee it, but I'm certainly working towards that. And unfortunately, but this is very much for the future, and this is a backward-looking report rather than a forward-looking report. Something similar may happen with our other property fund, the Patrizia Property Fund, but that's speculating into the future, and we've got no numbers to talk about there, and we remain vigilant about the future of that particular fund, which again was taken out to ensure that we had a steady income stream over many years, and over many years that we had capital appreciation. The capital programme, which we are forecasting, has the value of that has increased, but the forecast for the operational boundary has decreased. And that's for two reasons. Number one is less uncertainty as time goes on. There's more certainty about what the future brings because the future is closer than it was before. But secondly, it's because we anticipate that there will be significantly greater external funding which is going to be available to us. The capital financing requirement that we have stands at just over £33 million, which is a very significant amount and especially given that we've not had to borrow for capital purposes at all in the year, it's a very healthy position to be in. For many years, since well before I was a member of this council, we've had a situation where we've had a very significant amount of debt that we have owed for certain transactions which took place several decades ago, a couple of decades ago, which in retrospect have been quite onerous on us. And every year, in fact more than every year, probably every month, officers have looked at this to see if market conditions have changed so as to make it advantageous to us to buy out those old positions and to refinance. And year on year, market conditions have not been amenable to that. However, over the course of the last year, market conditions have changed so that it's becoming closer to the point where there will be long-term advantage to reschedule that debt. We're not there yet, we're not in that position. Officers will continue to monitor this on a very regular basis, and when it's appropriate and advantageous for us to reschedule that old debt, we shall, of course, do so. And I did say I wasn't going to go into great detail about this. I've gone into more detail than I expected. I'm more than happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much indeed, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Yeah. Thank you. Councillor. Would you like to exercise your right to speak now or at the end? Thank you. Item is now open for debate. Councillor Bird.
Thank you, Chair. We'll keep this brief. I note what the leader said about the property funds, and I did raise my concerns at the time when it suggested that going into property funds. And it looks like my hunch was probably right, that it was a bit of a risk, or too much of a risk for this council. But I guess we ought to try and learn from our mistakes. And obviously we've got the Fenland Futures. Are we exposed to any other similar things through the financing we provide to them, which is obviously a LATCO, and is there going to be any danger that we could have a loss of capital revenue from what we're lending to that organisation, which is obviously our investment vehicle for this council?
Councillor Burden.
Thank you very much indeed. An interesting word, risk, that you mentioned, Councillor Booth, through you, Chair. An interesting word which is much misunderstood, especially, I have to say, in local councils. Risk is not bad. Risk needs to be managed. If we had an attitude of minimising risk, we would also be minimising return. So we have to look at everything we do, at what the risk profile is, and we need to manage that risk to an appropriate level. And that does not generally mean minimising it to zero. Councillor Booth and I, since 2015, since when I joined the council, we have had this discussion, both on the same side, I have to say, about the risk that we have had with our investments in third parties, particularly building societies and local authorities. And the risk appetite that we had at that time was pretty close to zero. As a result, we failed to take advantage of many opportunities that there were, and we failed to maximise the income that we could have had, or at least increase the income that we could have had. Having a risk appetite of zero is rarely appropriate. It certainly wasn't appropriate back then. So let's now look at the LATCO. In fact, I'm not going to go into too much detail, partly because the LATCO Fenland Futures will be producing a report at the end of January, which will give a lot of detail about where the company is and what the future alternatives are for its progression. It's quite complicated. We're over 2 different sites, and one of those sites is split up into a number of different bundles as well. So it is a quite complicated position. But if it were not for local government reorganisation, I have no doubt that we would be continuing with the path that we set out on. Local government reorganisation has changed the equations now, and we will need to look with a very hard head indeed at the position that we are in once we have that report at the end of January, with a view to taking the most appropriate action at that time. I don't know what that action is going to be. We need to see that report. But again, coming back to risk, whereas previously we knew that our risk was spread out over quite a number of years into the future, now that won't be the case. And we will need now to reevaluate our risk appetite for the individual parts of the individual programs and for the company itself. Can't predict what the answer to that will be. It will be subject, of course, to a decision made by this council. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Mrs. Finch, would you like to exercise your right to speak?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would like to thank the leader and officers for all the hard work that they've put in over the course of the year to bring these financial statements to us. So well done and thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bowden, would you like to sum up, please?
No need, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, the recommendation is at page 48 of the agenda pack and is for full council to note the report. Is that duly noted? Yes. Thank you. Agenda item 10 is an update on the local plan and appears at pages 57 to 64 of the agenda pack. I now call upon Councillor Bowden to present the report.
Thank you, Chairman. This report would have been produced by Councillor Laws, who unfortunately can't be with us today because of illness. And it's not a report that even a month ago I expected that would be brought before this council. Because, once again, we have to be flexible in the face of changing circumstances. And the circumstances which changed here towards the end of November, last week in November, first week of December, was a series of announcements from central government, either about things they were changing immediately or things they were going to be changing in the new year. Specifically about local plans, they made it clear that every local authority, which has local plan responsibility, had a choice between three options. This wasn't the case previously. And the three options were to conclude the local plan they were currently working on, if they were working on a local plan, a draft local plan, and to submit it to their planning inspectorate no later than the 31st of December 2026, or to start effectively a new draft local plan based on their new rules, which I'll talk about in a short period of time, on a reduced timescale of a maximum of 34 months, or if the council failed to do either of those, for the government to send in planning inspectors to do the work for them. That is, to make the decisions for us about what our local plan should be and to charge us through the nose for that privilege. We hadn't faced that position before. We hadn't anticipated government would do that. I think government is going to have some difficulty and capacity in actually fulfilling that, but nevertheless, that is what was announced at the end of November. So we needed to make a choice. And we looked very carefully at the choice of concluding our existing draft local plan and submitting it before the 31st of December 2026. And it would not be impossible for us to do that. We would need to update many of the reports we already have, and there would be one or two new reports which would need to be commissioned. But it was felt that given the national shortage of consultants to be able to do this, given the new timescale that the central government has set up, together with the relatively short amount of time there is before the 31st of December 2026, and this would involve 2 sets of public consultation, given all of that, we felt, after a lot of challenge, I have to say, to it, that we would not be in a position to produce a compliant report which would not be rejected by the government inspectors if we were to submit it by the 31st of December 2026. We did not like the alternative of just saying nothing to government and letting them send their planning inspectors in to set up a local plan for us. So the only remaining alternative is what is proposed before us today. And that is, first of all, formally to withdraw the draft local plan that we have currently been working on. And secondly, to start a new local plan based on the new system government is setting up. Government will next year produce a new national policy planning framework, and this is expected to be quite radically different in some respects from the existing one. Government's already indicated some of the changes there are going to be. The biggest change, which won't directly affect us, will be effectively removing protection from green belt land, which has had protection for up to a century in some places, and that protection from house building will be reduced or in some cases eliminated. But there are a whole host of other changes which are going to be within the National Policy Planning Framework revision, which have been signposted by government, and the overwhelming majority of them are designed to increase the number of houses for which planning permission will be given, to reduce the difficulties that some developers have in getting planning permission, and in some cases associated with this, and in many cases in terms of Finland, taking development decisions out of the hands of councillors entirely and giving them under delegated powers to officers to make rather than going through the council planning committee process. So there are quite radical changes within this, but nevertheless, of the three options we've got in front of us, using the information we've currently got, so we can build on the reports we've currently got, updating those reports and going through the two stages of statutory consultation that we must do with the public, is achievable within the timescale of the life of this council, that is up to, we assume, 31st of March 2028. And so it is that option that we are recommending here, that we formally withdraw the draft, existing draft local plan, which sets off this 34-month timetable, or 30-month timetable, depending on which way you calculate it. It starts the clock running on that, but for us to do this in time that we will be in control of our own decisions here, and that it will be this council which will make the decision about what the local plan will be after March 2028. Because if we don't start now, and if we don't do it quickly, then the decision will be made not by this council, but by the unitary authority which will take over from us. And I'd far rather, if we're going to be doing the work and we're going to be doing all the input and we're going to be paying for most of it, that work, that decision finally rests with the members of this council here present. It's not an easy decision to have to make, and it will involve a significant amount of work. But our previous attitude of allowing things to just roll on until local government reorganisation is no longer a viable option. And government has also said they expect the new unitary authorities to start very quickly indeed in the next version of the local plan. And if you think that's a bit wasteful, then you're probably right, but that's what government is insisting on happening. And again, it's beyond our control. We just have to roll with whatever it is that government decides to do. There will be a lot of challenges involved in this, but also some opportunities. And I'm looking forward to those members who have participated previously, together with new members, playing a part in getting this local plan, this draft local plan, which now goes to the year 2050, to get this into the best possible shape we can, so that what is inherited by the unitary authority which follows us is as amenable to the needs of local people as it's possible for us to get, bearing in mind that we won't have any choice but to meet government targets so far as new house building is concerned for the future. That is a non-negotiable part of the local plan, and those who feel that they can manage to have their area have no increase in house building, I'm sorry to say, are probably inevitably going to be disappointed by the process as a whole. I wish I had some better news to give, Madam Chairman, to be quite honest, but of the options we've got available, this is the best option now. As I say, a month ago, I wouldn't have gone down this road. Now, government is giving us very little choice. This is the least bad option we have available to us. Thank you very much indeed, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Miscandlin, would you like to exercise your right to speak now? Later. Thank you. The item is now open for debate. No questions? Yeah. Councillor Booth, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've read the report. I've noted what the leader said. I mean, I don't think we really have a choice in the matter. but it's taken us 7 years to get this far, and we've probably only maybe got to about halfway in the existing process of getting a local plan. I have to say I'm sceptical that we'll be able to deliver another or new version of local plan in 2 years. Yeah, I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But what is, I think, missing on this report, which I think might be useful for members to have, is what the process entails for developing a new local plan under the new regime, so that they know. So, for example, we were given briefings on, these are the steps you need to go through. So I think that would be really useful. I also note the costs involved, but we are able to draw on quite a number of grants to offset that. But we really do need to pull our finger out and get moving, which I think from past experience we haven't managed to do. Just doing a quick Google search, the wonders of AI, it says it's been about 100 local plans published since 2019. Or adopted, I should say. Now, a lot of those would have started prior to 2019, probably a few years, so it's probably only the last few years, but there have still been a steady stream of plans adopted by other local councils over the last few years, which would have probably started around the same time with us. So we need to, we really need to get a move on with this, and I think, we've just had too many delays, and that's why we failed to deliver under the existing regime.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs French.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, I fully support this. I was against this because of the amount of money it was going to cost, but having various departments at the government keep changing rules and regulations, as a member of the planning committee, I'm not quite sure this is going to help or hinder. But if you remember, most of you weren't here, but some of you were. We started the local plan in 2007, and it took 7 years then. So we started the other one in 2019, but we have had COVID and everything in between. We've got no choice. I think the amount of money it's going to cost, again, is outrageous, but we've got no choice. So I do support it.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Miscanlon, would you like to exercise your right to speak?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, I fully support this going through because I was on the original committee, as Councillor Booth was, when we did the thing, but then COVID took over and messed everything up for everybody. I think it's important that we get something through so that we are in a good position to present a up-to-date plan for Fenland, even if we are a little bit of the new unitary authority. So I fully support this going through.
Thank you. Councillor Bowden, would you like to sum up?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And I'd like to thank Councillor Booth for the various comments he made, all of which I'll agree with, but I'd like to just put them in context. And I'll take Councillor Booth's word for it, or Councillor Booth's reading of AI for it, if there have been 100 councils which have adopted a new local plan in the last 7 years. But if so, that shows how the system is failing, because local plans are now meant to be reviewed every 5 years, and if fewer than half of the councils have adopted a local plan in the last 7 years, it shows just how many local authorities are facing difficulty with this process. And it's a process which, Councillor French is entirely correct, is outrageously expensive. You do not get a local plan for less than £1 million. And in fact, it could be quite a bit more than that. Now, fortunately, we've got some grant funding available to us. And fortunately, we can build on some of the reports which already we have for the previous draft local plan. So the actual cost we will have will be less than that. I'm keeping a very close eye on that cost, but I'm pleased to say that because of the robust financial position of the council, it still will not create immeasurable difficulties for us and won't necessitate any changes to our plans overall if things do go according to plan and if we are facing local government reorganisation on the 1st of April 2028. And Councillor Booth was also completely correct about the timing of this and about the speed with which things should be done. And I can assure him that once the decision was made to recommend this course of action to full council, the first thing that I asked officers to do was to produce a detailed timeline, report by report, consultation by consultation, of what would be done, in which month, when it would be concluded, and have that scheduled all the way through to March 2028. In fact, I asked for it to be scheduled all the way through to January 2028 to allow us a couple of months leeway in case anything goes wrong. But Councillor Booth, you're entirely correct about the need to keep a very close eye on the timeline of this. I can promise you I will be doing so. I suspect that you will be doing so too, and I will be very welcome. I'll very much welcome any comments you have to make about us sticking to that timeline. So I'm sorry to say this is a report which I'm bringing to you where the alternatives are worse. It's not something I would have liked to have brought before you, but we just do not have any choice thanks to the government changes which have taken place in only the last few weeks. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Members, the detailed recommendations are at page 58 of the report. Are they agreed? Yes, thank you. Agenda item 11 is a report in relation to the draft Hackney carriage. Agenda item 11 is a report in relation to a draft Hackney carriage and private hire licensing policy for 2026 to 2031, which can be found at pages 65 to 166 of the agenda pack. I now call upon Councillor Oliver as chairman of the licensing committee to present the report.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This report outlines the Licensing Committee's recommendation to renew the taxi licensing policy for the period 2026 to 2031. As the changes to the policy are minimal, primarily housekeeping updates and removal of outdated legislation and guidance, formal consultation was not required. That's a In light of potential national minimum standards and other forthcoming regulation changes, the committee agreed not to introduce significant amendments at this stage, opting instead to await the outcome of these developments. The Licensing Committee reviewed the proposed updates and unanimously supported the draft policy. It was subsequently approved and recommended to Full Council for adoption. The proposed draft policy is presented in Appendix A for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hoy, would you like to speak now or reserve your right? Thank you. The item is now open for debate. Any debaters? Councillor Hoy, would you like to speak now?
No need, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Oliver, would you like to sum up?
Thank you.
Thank you, members. The recommendation is at page 65 of the report and is for Full Council to adopt the proposed Hackney carriage and private hire policy at Appendix A for the period of 2026 to 2031. Is that agreed? Thank you. Just let the others back in. Agenda item 12 is a report in relation to the statement of licensing policy for 2026 to 2031, which can be found at pages 167 to 218 of the agenda pack. I now call upon Councillor Oliver as chairman of the licensing committee to present the report.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This report outlines the Licensing Committee's recommendations to renew the statement of licensing policy for the period 2026-2031. A public consultation was carried out and the Licensing Committee considered all responses received. Members reviewed and discussed the feedback, which was unanimously supportive of the draft policy. Following this, the committee voted in favour of approving the draft policy. The proposed draft policy, based on the Licensing Committee's recommendation, is presented as Appendix A for consideration of approval.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor, I've forgotten your name. Imafidon, thank you. Would you like to speak now or reserve your right?
Reserve, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
The item is now open for debate.
Other than thanking everyone for the report, there's nothing else to add, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Oliver?
Nothing further.
Thank you. Thank you, members. The recommendation is at page 167 of the report and is for full council to adopt the proposed statement of licensing policy at Appendix A for the period of 2026 to 2031. Is that agreed? Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, before we conclude today's meeting, I would like to take this opportunity to wish you all a happy Christmas and best wishes for the new year. The next ordinary meeting of Full Council will take place on Monday the 23rd of February 2026 at 4 p.m.